Well, that was finally a fun one with some real overtaking. I'm Rachel, and this is my race rambling for the 2025 Bahrain Grand Prix. So I'm apologize in advance if this is a little bit rushed. It's 3:57 and IndyCar starts at 4:30, at least the broadcast does. So I'm gonna have to go through this quickly. I put this off as much as I could, waiting for all of the penalties to come through, and they have. So I believe all my information here is correct. Let's just get into it because again, I don't have much time to chat. We're gonna fit this in very tightly. Okay, let's start with the race rating here. I have the race rating 7 out of 10. I was in between 7 and 8. Ultimately, I think there are some things, like there was a lot of very fun overtaking, but there were things that could have been better. I do think it proved that Bahrain is a fun circuit, and it is not just because it's typically the first race, that it's an enjoyable experience. There was some real multi-corner overtaking, which we've been deprived of so far this year, so I really enjoyed that. Any of the chaos was because of racing, not because of like weather or anything. So that's kind of double-sided. I think the safety car could have been a lot more fun, which we'll talk about a little bit. That could have been more fun. I think a safety car is fun when it improves something for somebody, more so than when it hurts somebody. And I think it only hurt people this race, and not in any really dramatic way either. So that wasn't very entertaining. No overtaking for the lead, which is entertaining in a separate way, and there was enough overtaking elsewhere in the field to make up for that. But yeah, I think this really did cement itself to me personally, at least as that Bahrain is a fun track. I do think I actually did enjoy the gap between testing and this, because it gave some time for things to move and you're also not sick of it, because Bahrain is a beautiful track. It's one of the better looking circuits. I do think that just by nature of it all being sandy, it does make a difference. I do think sometimes when you're watching a track and you're seeing dead grass, that sucks. That's been an issue, especially in IndyCar recently. Like, what circuit was that? Thermal? That did not look very cute. And a lot of people diss on Thermal, and I was ridiculing them for dissing on Thermal, but here I am dissing on Thermal. Anyways, we're talking about F1 here. Yeah, I enjoyed that. And 7 out of 10, maybe 8 out of 10. I think if the safety car was more fun or there was some overtaking for the lead, it would have bumped that up. But a good 7 out of 10, very enjoyable race, kept my attention. Let's get into quali. I did not watch this live, so that kind of dulled the experience for me. Maybe that's also why my overall rating is like a 7 out of 10, just because like I watched the race live, but it's not so much fun for me to like, when a session is not live, it's kind of boring to me, just period. Anyways, so Oscar Piastri pole, his second pole position, very good for him. I think the actual quali result is quite interesting. We were expecting things to be much closer than they were. So the fact that it's Piastri and then Norris down in 6 says something, which we will talk about. Also, the gap at the top was really not as was much closer than we thought it would be. It really seemed like it was just going to be McLaren 1-2, and then the rest would figure it out. And that wasn't the case. So, and that is a good thing in my opinion. We have to talk about Alex Albon. That was really unfortunate. He had a lockup that prevented him from just naturally making it into Q2. However, after Q2 started, the FIA was like, oh crap, actually, Nico Hulkenberg was out of track limits and his lap did not count, and he should be starting in P16. And Alex Albon should have been able to move up into Q2, but that unfortunately did not happen. Lots of things with the FIA going on right now. And another not good look for them, but you know, what can you do now? It's happened. I do think that is kind of like a consistent issue with the FIA though, and even today, I think we need to be better at making decisions quicker and making decisions during the race. I think the George example is a good example of like when you actually do want to wait after the race to make a decision about something. But especially when it's like the start of the race and something happens and they're like, oh, we'll talk about this after the race, like there'll be a decision then. Like, no, because then you're also, I think the biggest gripe with the FIA is issues with like messing with the racing. And when you are putting consequences after the race, you're not giving anybody any chance to like, well, one, it's like you couldn't mess with the race and make it more interesting without actually like messing with the race, and so you should take that opportunity. But also when you're doing things after, you're not giving anybody any chance to like make up from that, and I think that's a problem. Anyways, that meant that he was out-qualified by Carlos Sainz for the first time, who actually made it up all the way into Q1, which I think is indicative that obviously, yeah, someone could have made it to Q1 as he has been. But P8 for Sainz is great. There's been conversation that he's sort of finally up and improving and getting the swing of things, which is very nice to see. I am a Carlos Sainz fan. I think him ahead of Hamilton is... I'm clapping a little for that, even though I am a Hamilton fan. It's always going to sting a little bit what happened there with Ferrari. Of course, I support the decision. Obviously, it makes sense. You're gonna drop Carlos Sainz for Lewis Hamilton, but he can still hurt. Okay, moving on. Liam Lawson had an issue with DRS that kept him in P17 allegedly. I don't want to talk about Liam Lawson because I don't want to be part of a cycle for him. I think he's obviously gonna this is a challenging time for him mentally. And especially on a circuit like Bahrain, he just came from Suzuka into Bahrain. He's tested in Bahrain. He's done F2 in Bahrain. He should be comfortable here. And so I think the fact that he's not is very clearly indicative of a mental block in some case, which of course makes sense. So I don't want to talk about that too much because give him space for that. Doing up into Q2 is very exciting. Again, it kind of seems like a lot of people are getting the hang of things, as Sainz was now doing is. Also, just a very good weekend from Alpine. I'm hoping that they'll be able to keep that up. I kind of think they will because they have been doing better at the end of last season, and so the start of this season was kind of strange. But again, Alpine is very up and down. I don't know, maybe Fabio had some special prayers for his birthday or something, and this was working out. But I'm very excited to see him up in Q2, up in P11. Actually, he was close to Q1, so close. That's the thing with everything being so close. It's you could be hard on yourself to being oh my god, why can't I have been that much faster? But it really isn't that much faster. It really could have gone either way. So I hope that'll be a good thing for him anyways. And I think being so close will be an extra motivator to keep pushing. Great laps from Gasly as well, up in Q1. So Q3, sorry, P4. That's fantastic. That is so good. Actually, that's what I'm saying. Gasly has a way. He's actually a very talented driver. I'm happy he's been out of the Red Bull environment for some time now. And I hope the Alpine continues on a forward trajectory because I think he's a great driver. And I also really do believe in Jack Doohan, so I want them to be able to compete. So I hope they keep this up. Hadjar out in Q2, he ended up in P12 and he was visibly frustrated, which obviously sucks that he was out. He was P12 because he's been making it into Q1 a bit, but I think the frustration is a good sign. And I mentioned this last weekend that James Hinchcliffe had mentioned this weekend. Typically when drivers come in, they readjust their expectations. When you're winning and everything in F2, you're not going to come into F1 winning everything. And it seems like Hadjar is not fully adjusting his expectations, which is a good thing because I think you should be frustrated that you're P12 when you know you can be better. And when you know you can be better, that's a positive drive. But it is a fine line. What is the difference between that and ignorance? And how I think when you're in a situation like Hadjar is in the V-carb and you're in a situation where you're not the one in the most imminent danger in your environment, and you're also in the more stable car, I think that gives him an advantage of his confidence can just be confidence that's motivating versus when you're Liam Lawson and you are in a Red Bull that nobody can drive. I think that can turn faster, and that's not a diss on Lawson. I think that's simply an environment thing. But I'm kind of happy that Hadjar was frustrated. Again, I think he can use that properly as motivation. Sainz in Q3, we already mentioned that. Mercedes, that was they kind of had an odd admin weekend. I don't know why they thought that they could leave the pits or leave their garage. I feel like that's not normally they're oh, it's race director things, those things change every weekend, but I feel usually, yeah, you can't leave your garage until you know when the session is starting, so that's kind of a strange thing that happened there. Only a 1-place penalty is fine. Apparently they had a decent excuse for it, so it's whatever. It didn't really impact them much anyways. Big crash for Esteban Ocon in qualifying. Very happy he was okay. He ended up having a good recovery drive, so all worked out for him. Grateful for the mechanics that could get that car back together. And again, happy he was okay because that didn't look like a nice one. Okay, moving on to the race here. Oscar Piastri wins. Very dominant win. Again, one of those races where it's you don't see him. like ever. You saw him maybe when he was pitting, and like literally never saw him ever again, which is a good sign. Very dominant win. I think it's interesting. I mean, maybe this is like Verstappen had a pretty dominant win, but like my comment is that the two, well, now Piastri has won more than Lando this season, and they have been much more dominant wins than Lando. To be fair, weather was playing a role, but I don't really remember Lando having much of a gap in Australia. I don't know. Again, maybe that could have been a weather thing, but it does seem like the 2 times Oscar has won this year, they were very like, he was always ahead by a good 5-6 seconds, and there was never a threat. And I felt like there was a threat to Lando. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. We'll talk about Lando a bit now. Rolled out of the grid box. Got him a 5-second penalty. The penalties were kind of strange this weekend. Like 5 seems kind of low when you think about like Carlos got a 10-second penalty and Tsunoda got no penalty. But we'll talk about that a little bit again also. And again, just like, well, I'm happy they had this penalty during the race. This was so cut and dry. Like, he was so obviously over the line. Seemed like he like rolled forward when he was trying to like find the bite point of the clutch to get going. But like, man, silly little mistake there. And again, his race was like decent. Lots of good little battles there, but like he never overtook Russell on any of the chances he got that were kind of important chances. I think especially the fact that he didn't overtake Russell like in the end when Russell was like struggling with just having the car working at all is interesting. I do think his racecraft, they mentioned this on the broadcast, his racecraft was kind of lackluster. Like just not quite on it. And not to compare him to Kimi Antonelli. Well, like Kimi Antonelli was really on it this weekend. He had multiple fantastic overtakes, really good fights. The P11 is not at all reflective of the race he had. He just kind of got bit by the safety car and his 2 like soft stints, which was kind of strange, especially because the fact that that one soft stint got cut short because of the safety car. They needed to go longer. That just didn't work out. Would have been nicer for him to get more points. Like, he really deserved more points. But like when you're like, I don't know, like I think it sounds awful to be comparing Lando Norris to Kimi Antonelli as a rookie, but like somebody had better overtaken this weekend, and it was the rookie. Sorry, Gasly P7 is fantastic. He kept up very well. He like it's really he never really went down. I think he dropped a position just from like safety car things or just like, but still 1 position. Like they were saying like, okay, be prepared for him to like fall down just like as natural pace of the car. No, he kept up. So that's indicative of him obviously, but also the car. Lewis had a very great performance finishing P5, finally like a decent weekend for Ferrari. Except for of course when he won the sprint in Shanghai. He had a couple of very good battles as well, which is nice to see. I think something that people have been saying is like, and this maybe happens to Verstappen too, once you're like winning dominantly for so long, you kind of forget how to fight with the rest of the group. And maybe Lewis has been a bit too conservative, so nice to see him really fighting this year. And he was fighting with all his ops. He was fighting with Sainz. He was fighting with Antonelli. I just thought that was funny. He ended up ahead of both of them, so it worked out for him. Tsunoda in points as well, his first points in Red Bull, which is very nice. Obviously, again, like I mentioned this last weekend, but like from this perspective, obviously, the swap was a good idea for Red Bull. Maybe not for Racing Bulls, maybe not for Liam Lawson, but if the whole point is Constructors' Championship, we're moving in the right direction here. Again, a little odd that there was no penalty. I mean, when you consider that, the oversteer he had into Carlos Sainz was crazy. And so when you consider that and the fact that he finished in points, obviously there's something he gets about the car more than Lawson did to be able to like control it. Obviously he lost it, but to keep it to the point to be able to score points says something, and actually to be moving up. He did move up, correct? Where did he qualify? Yes, he moved up a point, a level, but still 1 position, sorry. Still, I think that says something kind of strange. He didn't get a penalty. I guess they were just like, well, he lost control. And I understand that penalties are like meant to be on what happened and not the outcome. Because you could do something crazy and the outcome be nothing, and you could do something nothing and the outcome be crazy. And so you have to punish the action and not the outcome. But for that to like kill Carlos's race, and it was like not a Carlos problem. Like Tsunoda lost the car. That's kind of unfortunate. But like whatever. Lawson has got a couple penalties for, what were they? Causing a collision. Some during the race, some after. I don't think that changed where he finished, weirdly enough. But again, no comment on that. I already spoke on that. Jack Doohan finishing in P15 sucks. Bad safety car luck for him. He had just pit and then the safety car came out, and he talked on the post show about that. Just like, yeah, just unlucky. But I think it'll be good confidence booster to know that that wasn't his doing. Leclerc had a decent race, kept it within 5 seconds of Russell just in case there was a penalty that ended up never coming. Yeah, but they're still nowhere near, are they, the Ferraris? I mean, they kind of fought with them. There was some back and forth between Norris and Leclerc, but like, I don't know. I do think that Leclerc is a better racer. I do think he has more experience. He's better like overtaking and battling. Especially because I think he's confident in himself. I think he obviously has a lot more confidence than Lando Norris. So I think that could work to help him. I predicted Leclerc winning the Drivers' Championship, and I think we're past that. My current prediction is Oscar Piastri, if we're being honest. Yeah, I'm having feelings. We'll get to that. Let me move on so we can get to that. Esteban Ocon had a great recovery up into P8. And Ollie Behrman had a fantastic recovery as well. He started P20, he qualified last, finishing P10. Very good, getting some double points for Haas. The radio that they had was very cute to Ollie Behrman, being like, they even got his dad on there, very cute. I think that's good. It seems like they're having a very good community and a good environment, which I really appreciate, especially when you have like a rookie in Esteban Ocon. We've talked about Esteban Ocon in the past. I think he's been put in situations that have made him have to like, not made him have to, but like have brought out a negative side to him that I don't think is fair to him. And so it's nice, especially with like the Gunter of everything in Haas. I think it's nobody necessarily like anticipated the environment to be negative, but it seems like it is a good environment now, and I appreciate that. And it seems like Ocon and Behrman have a good relationship. I was hearing some rumblings on some of the commentary that Ocon is a little bit shook by Behrman's performance, and it's maybe pushed him to perform better, which I think is a good thing. And as long as they keep that relationship positive, it can be a very good thing. I think I at least anticipate, I think a lot of people anticipated that Behrman would come in very solid as he has. So if Ocon is surprised by that, I think that's indicative of Behrman performing very well as we're seeing. And again, I hope that stays a good environment. Nico Hulkenberg was disqualified. I have a DNF here. Let's change that quickly to DN disqualified. The SQ. Yes. I actually don't know who technically finished last with that. Sainz DNF obviously, and then Hulkenberg disqualified for plank wear. As soon as the safety car restart happened and I saw all of those sparks, I was like, oh, somebody for sure is gonna have a plank wear issue. Interesting that keeps happening. It feels like it should be kind of an easy thing to prevent, and I feel like it was never really an issue until all of a sudden, like in the last half year, it's kind of been an issue more often. So that's kind of strange. I don't know if they're just testing for it more, or if people are just more willing to take risks at this point in the regulations. I don't know. But no points there for the Sauber team. Well, they didn't get any points anyways. But anyways, let's move on to new category I have here, driver of the day. I put it in this week specifically because I wanted to talk about George Russell, who is my driver of the day, who I actually voted for driver of the day. I think he, like, I don't know how Hamilton got driver of the day, like, no shade, but like, how did he finish that race? Oh my god, how did George Russell finish that race? I was concerned that he was going to get a penalty. Okay, let me step back a bit in case you're like unaware of the situation. Russell started having electrical issues with the car that was like running everything haywire. It caused transponder issues. So first of all, they couldn't see where he was properly on the circuit, which messed up the entirety of the timing, which is why if you're watching the broadcast, the timing screen went away for a bit, because I think you could see where everybody else was, but you couldn't see where anybody was in relation to George Russell. So they just took that away, kept saying that he was like lost. So that caused the electrical issue, caused transponder issue, which also was potentially causing, like, it got to a point where the steering wheel might have turned off, and they were like, well, as long as it stays in. And it's like, well, yeah, you better hope it actually does, because Alonso's came out in practice. But I think there was also, I don't know if it was related, but there was also a braking issue. Sometimes I think he said like he would just brake and there would be nothing, which is like really concerning. But all of those issues meant that he could not use DRS. And so the team, I think they got permission from the FIA to have manual DRS, so like they could override something and do it manually. And in the case that he was overtaken and he was behind Norris or Leclerc, and he would have DRS because he was so far behind Piastri, wasn't getting DRS there. But he clicked the radio button, and because of his electrical issues, something had malfunctioned and it opened the DRS, and he quickly closed it. But that flagged an issue to the FIA, a DRS issue, of course, because he didn't use it appropriately. I didn't think that they would penalize him for that specifically, because I think you could understand that the car simply wasn't working. It wasn't like somebody trying to cheat in any way. But I was concerned that they would like retroactively punish him, because like maybe he should have retired the car, because maybe it wasn't safe for him and others. It's kind of curious to me that they didn't do that. I guess it wasn't to that extreme of an extent, I suppose. I guess they really like don't like to like force people to retire, but like, I don't know, that was kind of concerning to me. And so the fact that he finished at all, I think was fantastic. And the fact that he still finished ahead of Lando Norris was very fantastic. I mean, Norris tried and it didn't work. Back to that racecraft issue he was having this weekend. But yeah, driver of the day goes to George Russell. That was like, blew my mind how he finished. Okay, moving on to driver standings. I believe these are correct. I haven't cross-checked them after all the penalties came out post-race, but I don't think... Yeah, Lawson had penalties and he already doesn't have points, and Dwayne has penalties. He never had points. Okay, I believe this is good. So, this is where I'm going to talk about Lando Norris. Actually, let's talk about everybody else for a second first. I don't really have much to say on the driver standings because there has not been a ton of change. Still 3 rookies in Lawson, Dewey, and Bortoleto without points. Kind of a shame. I think Dewey maybe could have got points this weekend if things had maybe gone the other way for the safety car, but unfortunately not. I don't think like Bortoleto's performance is bad. I don't think it's like fair for him to have 0 points, or like his performance alone is not the reason why he has no points. It's just a car thing and just not capitalizing, being lucky. Again, I'm not talking about Liam Lawson, but still Alonso has no points, which is interesting. I think it's also interesting, like everywhere he goes the team turns to shit. I don't know what to say about that. Does suck for Sainz though that he DNF'd. I think he could have got more points here. Anyways, and now we'll talk about Lando Norris, because this is kind of like the big thing for me this race and podcast that I have to say. This dude has got to stop talking so negatively about himself publicly. I'm getting frustrated. They were talking about this, what was it, in the pre-show for the race? Or was it during qualifying or something? Where it's like, you feel however you feel about yourself in private. Say whatever you want to say about yourself in private. Beat yourself up all you want in private. When you are saying things publicly, you're just like bringing that all back to you tenfold. And it's just a really negative downward spiral that he's not helping. Because like when you say something on, they said and I can't remember when they said it, was at some point in the commentary, they're like, if you say something on Saturday, you're gonna be asked about it again on Sunday. And when you're saying negative things about yourself, how does that help anyone? You're giving them headlines. And I was listening, what really got me was when he was doing his post-race interview in the pin, and who was interviewing him? Lawrence Barretto, I think, was interviewing him. And I think he tried to set Lando up to like say something nice about himself multiple times, and he just didn't. He asked the initial question, and Lando just like was silent and very down, and then went on about himself. And then he said, oh, but can you find any confidence in knowing that like you are a fast driver, you've just got to get it to click? And he like couldn't, like, you could just say yes, and he couldn't. This is like concerning. And again, like, say what you want about yourself in private. You've got to figure out how to turn it off in public, because I think it's like, it's just hurting yourself at this point. He needs to shut up. They need to do some intense PR training on him again, because like what? And it's obviously not helping. This is what I was hinting at earlier. It's obviously not helping that Oscar Piastri is so cool and so calm. He never like says anything negative. Like, and again, you can say I messed up without like doing what he's doing. And so the fact that like Piastri has control, and he's only 3 points behind him now in the Constructors' Championship. The fact that he's so cool, calm, and collected, and his wins are very dominant. And he said earlier this week, like, it's the fastest car. You can't say it's not. We have the fastest car. That obviously will not help Lando, but that's like on Lando to figure out. I hope he has a sports psychologist. If he doesn't, he needs to get one. And if he does have one, actually maybe get somebody new, because it's obviously not working. Yeah, I'm concerned. And they did talk about it. Laura Winters and Davide Valsecchi, which, by the way, I love Davide. Have him every weekend. But he said, I think, he'll get pulled next weekend and he'll feel better and he'll be out of the spiral. I'm not sure. I mean, look how hard it was for him to have a decent start last year, because he got so in his head about his starts. Like, just figure out how to shut up in public, because this is actually making me irritated. And I don't know why it's making me so mad, but it feels so self-inflicted that it's like frustrating to me, because I know he's talented. And so if he loses the Drivers' Championship, because it's between him and Piastri 100%. If he loses, it's because of him, because he can do it. He's just got to figure out how to like chill. Rant over. I'm sorry, it just really pissed me off, especially when he was being set up to say something nice about himself, and all he had to do was say yes, and he just tore himself down even more. Anyways, we're going to move on to the team standings. Everybody has points now, which is exciting. McLaren's still in the lead. Not much change. The only change was Haas moving up and Alpine moving up, because Alpine got points for the first time, and then the double points for Haas was very nice. Again, better weekend for Ferrari. Probably their most solid weekend so far. Just from literally everybody finished, everybody got points, nobody got disqualified. The Red Bulls had atrocious pit stops. I haven't mentioned that yet. The issue that they were having in the first pit stops that they did for both Max and Tsunoda, where the pit light never turned green, even though it probably was safe to go. Happy that there was no penalties from that, because I felt like there could have been, so it's nice that there wasn't. And then again, a slow stop for Max Verstappen, which is strange, because he's usually the Red Bull are usually really on it. I'm hearing there's conflict with Max. Rumor is post-race there has been some tiffs between Max's team and Red Bull, because they're like, why is the car so bad? I've been saying I think he could leave sooner than we think, and I don't know. We'll have to see. Anyways, that's all I have to say about the Bahrain Grand Prix. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me ramble on. By the way, I'm going to start doing pre-race rambles, at least for F1, maybe also for IndyCar. I don't know. By the way, if you're listening, please tell me, do you think those should be separate pre-race ramblings, or should I put them together as just a weekend preview? Is there any topics you'd like me to specifically talk about in the pre-race rambles? I think I'm going to just a couple predictions, and then we'll reflect on them here. I'm not going to start that yet. I don't think I'll have that ready for Saudi Arabia. I think I'll take a little breather and start that for Miami, because I have finished school now. Thank you so much to everybody who has wished me luck and congratulated me. I have now finished all of my assignments. I'm officially done university, so I do have more time for this, which is why I will be ramping up the amount of videos I do. But again, I'm just going to give myself a little breather before I do that. And I also have ordered my microphone, and they have shipped. They are not here yet, but they have started shipping earlier than I thought they would, so I'm very excited about that. Hopefully those come by next weekend, and my Saudi Arabia race ramble will have better audio quality. I appreciate you all listening to it as it currently is. That'll be improved. Again, this is always a work in progress. If you have any constructive criticism that you are framing nicely, which you all have been very nice so far, please give it to me. Let me know if there's any topics you'd like me to discuss and add to my either pre or post race rambles. I'd like to make this a nice community that we all can interact with, and you guys like what I have to say and want and hitting the topics you'd like me to hit. Anyways, again, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you're watching this and you'd like to listen to it, it is on all podcasting platforms. If you are listening to this but would like to watch it, you can watch it on YouTube and Spotify. Please like, thumbs up, subscribe, rate, follow, comment, all of the things, and I will see you very soon.